The translations are out for My Hero Academia Manga chapter 425, and there's a lot that we really need to go over when it comes to this chapter. We need to talk about the implications of what's going on in Deku's head, the celebration of graduation, as well as the return and the leaving of some fan-favorite characters, as well as a potential final teaser to what's going to be going on with the Todoroki family subplot. All of that and more will be discussed in this review right now. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Man Drew, and I'm here to talk about the most recent chapter and do my review for My Hero Academia Manga chapter 425, titled Out of Season. And there's a lot of implications that you can make with the name, the fact that the graduation is happening out of season, but also that many of the people that are graduating from UA in this chapter are also out of their younger season, out of like the springtime of their youth, and now is about to head into the fall where they're going to be getting older, helping out with Hero Society and a lot more. And there's a lot that I really need to talk about when it comes to this chapter, and I'm just going to dive right into it and really talk about the beginning of this chapter, which is just the graduation, where we get to see some fan favorite third years or now graduates finally graduating from UA, as we get the confirmation that this graduation is happening in June, which is very important because at the very bare minimum, a few weeks have passed since the war actually ended. We know at least 1 week has passed, and we know that most likely than not, this final war either took place towards the end of May or towards like the beginning of May, where we know that everything that happened with Vigilante Deku and preparing for the final war and the final battle happened pretty much the entirety of March. So at bare minimum, or at most, a month has passed. And because of that, they won't be having graduation under Cherry Blossoms, but they'll be having the graduation under DJ Present Mike. And this is something that is very funny that I like that was added in this chapter, which is the realization that this is sort of kind of like a type of tradition at UA. And there's a fair amount of traditions that we actually learn about graduation in this chapter. We get to see that there are at least 2 representatives, one from the previous second years, who will now be third years, and a representative of the third years to actually have a speech, but also just getting to see like how wild it's going to be at graduation and how eventually people get used to the wildness, where the first years, now second years, have no idea what's going on, and the second years, who are now third years, are getting more into it. But getting a little bit more into what we learned about the graduation, we finally get to see that both Nejire as well as Tamaki finally graduated, and how we also get a better understanding of what's happening in the world right now, even during this graduation, specifically when it comes to Nezu. And how, for the most part, Nezu is going to be responsible for everything that is going to be happening in Japan, either building up the infrastructures, helping with like redistribution of resources, and really gaining more funding and resources from other countries. And that the reasoning why Nezu was doing it is because it ties back to what we learned before the final act, before the final arc, where we learned that Nezu was very like impactful and well known around the world. So it makes sense that he was kind of preparing all of this to happen, and there's a reasoning why he's the one doing it and no one else. So it's cool that we get a little bit more like world development in this chapter as well. But what's even more important is that we finally get to see Mawata Fuwa, a character that we were pretty much told was going to be playing a major part in the story by Horikoshi himself, and we get a lot of her in this chapter. But more importantly is what we get with Mirio in this chapter. And for the most part, to sum up his idea, he gives this speech about how when it comes to heroics, they always try to go from negatives to 0, but that they haven't made it back to 0, and that is not necessarily a bad thing, and how for now on, they're going to go into a world to try and make everyone smile and to bring the world more into positive. And you may be wondering, what does this actually mean? And from my interpretation of it, the idea is that heroes are supposed to return things back to the status quo, where everything is relatively known, normal, and a little bit stagnant. But after the incident with the war, they're not going to be returning to 0 or the status quo. They're going to return to something more positive, something better that is going to expand past what we perceive as the status quo, or how I would view it, a brand new status quo that is most likely going to be changing for the betterment of Hero Society and the people inside of it. And the reasoning why Mirio brings up smiling is there's something very important, because it not only ties to the information that he gained from Night Eye and like everything that he learned about the importance of smiling, but the idea that this is something that even the students of Class 1A, or should I say Class 2A, gained a better understanding when it comes to certain characters in the class, when it comes to expanding that smile and causing people to feel joy and happiness, not just from the civilians and not just from the heroes, but also from the villain side. So this is kind of setting up the idea that the heroes, or at least the younger generation of heroes, are going to be building a better world and changing the status quo for the better. And yes, you may be thinking that Muriel is giving this very serious speech. This is very much out of character for Muriel. Well, he also strips down naked and allows for one of the support corps classes, the one with the big eyelashes and that big robot, to just burst through the stage and cause everyone to laugh. So yes, Muriel is still relatively the same, but we also get a little bit more information about how he's been taking care of people, specifically Nejire, after the war to make sure that she's safe and not in pain, but also that the students of class, like formerly year 3, are now going to be heroes and actually going out and like helping for reconstruction and helping rebuild Japan from all over. And with that was the graduation portion of the chapter, but now we're going to be focusing into the part of the chapter involving Class 2A, because it is confirmed in this chapter that they have been moved into Class 2A. Now, they're in a temporary class, and most likely this class is the classroom that they were in when they were freshmen, first years, but they're all excited. They're excited that Aizawa is now going to be their homeroom teacher, which is not necessarily the case when it comes to being a teacher, not just in Japan, but also in other school systems. You typically don't keep the same homeroom teacher. However, this is manga, this is anime. They constantly break that rule a lot, especially in Slice of Life series, where for some reason they've been in school for 3 years and have the exact same homeroom teacher each time. But hey, that's just anime for you. But that's not the part that I want to get into. While yes, the students of Class 2A are very excited, they're also very much unexpected for what's to come, because as Aizawa is telling them the situation, he invites someone to the classroom where we see that Aoyama is here and declares that he's leaving UA, which this is amazing. This is something that many people expected to happen, but a lot of people didn't think that it would actually go through. But with what we learned later on with another character coming into Class 1A, this seems to have been an inevitability. And I will say that Aoyama's speech is very heart-wrenching, because he realizes that he wants to be side by side with them. And even though he was allowed to come to school, it's him making the decision to not return to UA because of everything that happened with All for One, and that he didn't explicitly choose to come here. He wanted to start to be a hero from scratch, and by doing so, he would eventually be able to meet them side by side by starting from zero. And that he brings up the idea that he was able to do this because Deku was able to reach out his hand. And it's a very sad and somber moment that Aoyama will no longer be in Class 2A with the fellow students. But hey, we get Shinzo, and we just get a very fun moment of everyone being a little bit sad and downtrodden by Aoyama leaving, but then Aoyama trying to lighten the mood with his laser. But as soon as Shinzo comes in, everyone was like, oh my gosh, it's Shinzo! Oh my gosh, you're going to be in Class 1A. And there's just a lot of funny moments in this chapter when it comes to just the humor and just people just laughing and smiling, which is also potentially having a double meaning to it, and we'll get there when we get there. But you just have this small moment I want to bring up of just everyone coming to a realization of what Hagakure looks like, and you just have Mineta's like, oh my gosh, there's a goddess there, as Aizawa just reels him back. It's like, yeah, no, we're not, there's a good reason why I'm here, and reels back Mineta. So we still retain a little bit of that humor. And another humorous moment that I missed out on was just Bakugo being here as well, and people questioning like, shouldn't you be in the hospital? You're heavily injured. And he's like, yeah, but you know, as long as I stay calm, everything's gonna be fine. And then he proceeds to begin to lose his top a little bit. But yeah, it's going to be funny to think that Bakugo is going to be here, but he's not going to be yelling because it's going to be stress on his heart. So that's going to be funny, and I can't wait to see where that's going later on. But yeah, after that moment, we actually get to see more of the third year of Mawata Huwa, which, once again, love the aesthetic of this character. Horikoshi never misses with character designs, but this is where we get the realization that the students of Class 2A, and potentially the third years as well, are going to be going more into the actual field. They may be at school, but more often than not, they're going to be broken up into groups and helping with restoration efforts, as well as traveling around the country to fight against like the aggregated or the leftover crime. And how they bring up the idea that what we've done right now will most definitely be in the history books after All Might's retirement, as well as the fight at Jakku, but that this period of time is also kind of what bred another All for One. So they're most likely going to be doing their job to try and prevent that from happening, and it's great that this is coming from Shoto, because that's going to tie into something that we see at the end of the chapter. But just to tie into it a little bit earlier here, but we see that Shoto is smiling even though there's something that he has to deal with, and I'm going to tie that into when I bring up the smiling of Uraraka as well. But yeah, even with that announcement, we just have Fuwa just bringing up the fact that she was once a student under Aizawa when she calls her Erasin, and just really showing how Aizawa was able to make her a better hero by the expulsion and was able to give her a better understanding of why she wanted to be a hero. But yeah, after that, we do have a moment of Deku being a little bit somber as the students are just chiming in, talking about how they get to meet the new first years and how they're complimenting the looks of people. Someone brings up how Tokoyami's hair is a little bit different, and then we just have Uraraka bringing up the fact that Deku's hair is different, and this is most likely a comment about how many people don't really like the aesthetic of Deku's hair right now, but for the most part, I'm very indifferent. As you can tell, his hair is not that much different from mine when it comes to the style itself, but hey, to each their own. But this is what I want to bring up, because in this moment, Deku notices that Uraraka is just smiling, and that this is most likely Deku coming to a realization that that smile, as well as within the last part of this chapter of Shoto's smile, are not genuine. And we know that that is most likely the case because literally the last chapter, we saw Uraraka just clenching her stomach and looking out the window, as we did not see the expression on Shoto's face in that last chapter as well, implying that the emotions that they are feeling in those moments are not the emotions that they're actually outward presenting in this moment. Because we know that they went through something similar with Deku, where they most likely were not able to truly save the villains that they were talking about, with Uraraka trying to save Toga but not being able to keep her alive, and with Dabi, most likely Shoto saving Dabi but not saving his heart, and how they're putting up this front of being happy as to not worry their fellow classmates, and that this is probably going to be something that Deku is going to address even when it comes to himself, where he may believe that he saved Tomura's heart but was unable to save Tenko's life. And that kind of brings us to the end of the chapter, where we do get this one character who is most likely going to be a villain in this destroyed world, potentially going to be an allegory for the next All for One, as we have both Deku as well as Shoto about to leave, as Shoto brings up the fact that he will be going to Aoyama's farewell party, as long as it's not today, as we cut over to Endeavor standing in front of this machinery, as we have the final words of the chapter saying the Todoroki family faces ... As we also get a confirmation of a extended break, a 2-week break, and this is most likely going to be something big. Not just the break, but also what's going to be happening with the Todoroki family. And just to cut to the case, most likely than not, this is Dabi. And the implication with all of these machines are that they are keeping Dabi alive somehow, some way, and that I think what is going to be happening in this moment is that we're going to potentially be exploring not just the characters in the Todoroki family, but exploring the other characters of Uraraka and Deku, and them dealing with a world where they have to begin to actively question whether or not they were able to save their respective villains, and what this means for them moving forward, and how they're going to potentially try and fix the hero society. Because if Dabi is still alive, people are going to be mad about this, but we also have to take into account that while Dabi's life was saved, Toya's life was saved, his heart, even at the end, was still hating and cursing the Todoroki family. And to a certain extent, you could argue that all of the 3 main characters with their 3 major fights were really unable to fully save their respective villains, but were able to save them in one way or another. And that potentially they may be able to save Dabi, Toya, or this could just be more reaffirmation of the idea that maybe not everyone can be saved fully, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't at least attempt to try. Which may also be the reasoning why we see that villain coming in, and that he could be the next All for One, but that they're going to potentially prevent it by extending a helping hand. Helping him and not just viewing him as just this objective evil or this objective villain. But yeah, I think that this was a very cool chapter to end on when it comes to the extended break of being like around 2 weeks. Maybe Horikoshi just needs to rest, or maybe he's going to be preparing for a longer epilogue than we probably would have expected. If it wasn't for this break, I think that I would have expected this to pretty much end within this volume, but now I'm a little bit... I do think that we're going to be going more into the epilogue, maybe even past this final volume, going into another volume, so a 2-volume epilogue where he may want to expand upon the ideas and these character interactions and just really expand upon what it means for a brand new hero society being created by the students of not just 2A, but also the newer graduates from the previous 3rd years. But yeah, let me ask you this. What did you think of the chapter? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? And how do you feel about Aoyama leaving Class 2A and the potential return of Dabi? Leave your thoughts down below, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!